looks a lot.
There we go. Wow. Look at this introduction.
What's up, big fella?
Thank you.
How are you, man?
How are
Good
you?
to see you. Welcome. Sit. You know that guy over there.
know this guy.
You're acquainted with that fellow over there to the left. Eli with us for 20 minutes. Delighted to see you. Delighted to have you. A million places to go with you. But let's start right there with your former team and obviously the recipe. They drafted a quarterback from Ole Miss with a veteran, established coach who knew something about winning, and we just showed before you got in here, you know, the highlights of you winning those Super Bowls. What is your sense of Jackson Dart now with John Harbaugh as his coach?
Well, I think it's a great situation, and Jackson Dart, I think, had a great first year, and he has that ability. Obviously, he can throw the ball on time and get it out there. He has the ability to run with his feet. He can scramble and make plays. He can extend plays in the pocket. As a defense, that's hard to defend. He can win a lot of different ways. Obviously, the number one thing, he's got to learn to be available every week, and he takes some hits, and that's just something, you know, being young and understanding, hey, these guys are big in the NFL, and the hits are a little bit bigger, and so you got to learn to when to slide, when to, you know, take the hits and do those things. But I think with, you know, bringing in Coach Harbaugh, a guy he's been successful. He's been in the league. He knows how to handle the New York media. There's going to be no situation that's new to him or too big for him, and just bringing that belief that, hey, we can win here and we can do it, and having these, you know, young players step into that role of being leaders of this team and creating a great culture. I'm excited about the future of the Giants.
I'm curious about that, the available piece, because that was a huge topic here and everywhere. Was, you know, all the hits that he takes, and he's just trying to get extra yards and all that kind of stuff. And the idea, we were struck by how he kept saying afterwards, well, this is just the way I play.
Right.
This is the way I play. So how does someone get through to him? And we'll show some of the hits, you know, that he takes over the season. Like, I would have thought like someone like you know, or someone like that. Who is it that can get through to him and say, listen, this moment here, we can't be doing this stuff on the sideline? Like, who and how does that message get through?
Well, I think that comes from the head coach, and it comes from the offensive coordinator, and you have a whole off season to watch some of these clips and make adjustments. And you know, last year he wasn't worried about that. The coaches weren't worried about that necessarily. Now they say, hey, this is happening. You've played, you know, half a season. You've taken hits. You've been in the protocol. You've missed games. Like, you know, we got to find ways to slide, and you got to teach that, and you got to rep that, and you just got to come in and practice and just make sure that's a thought. And obviously you see a Josh Allen, like, he doesn't slide much, and he runs and he makes plays, and there are moments, and you want to keep that aggressiveness. You want to keep that playmaking ability, and just kind of dial it down in certain situations.
I'm not looking at Bean and saying he's awful and that he needs to get fired. What I'm saying is, if McDermott goes, you go.
Yeah.
If McDermott stays, you stay. It shouldn't be the coach being gone, but him not only staying, but getting promoted. But I will say this. I'm not going to throw shade on Brian Dable. He was a coach of the year now. He was a coach of the year. The man is familiar with Josh Allen. That's how he got the head coaching job to begin with. Me personally, if you said Joe Brady deserves it more than him, I wouldn't argue with that. But let's not act like Brian Dable can't coach. I mean, the man has had some good moments, especially when he was the OC in Buffalo. We gotta respect that man.
Yeah.
We gotta respect that man.
Here is my issue with any coach coming into Buffalo at this point. Is you have a coach in McDermott that is winning playoff games every year, pretty much, right? Been to the AFC Championship game twice.
8 playoff wins.
Right, 8 playoff wins. I think other than Mahomes, Allen has the most playoff wins by a margin, right? By a margin. And so as you look at this guy knows how to win playoffs games. They just win one on the road. They do all these things. They're checking all these boxes. You are literally firing him, and the only person who can take you is to win a Super Bowl or to go. You got to get to the Super Bowl. Who is going to walk in this with this roster? Who of all the coaches you're hiring that Bean put on the field, which coach would have taken them to the Super Bowl? Not one.
100%.
Not one.
I got to tell you,
so
that.
you can't fire a
Maybe
guy.
he feels if you have Dable back, because Dable and Josh Allen had such a good relationship.
But
That's
Brady,
really where he grew the most. Maybe he feels like with
Brady's
Dable
gotta
there
go
in
one
some
with him too, Shay.
capacity.
Yeah, that's the
Sure, but
point. Brady did a great job
But
with
he was
it.
doing this, and it feels like he's done this now with Brady.
I got to tell y'all this. If I'm McDermott, I want the Baltimore Ravens job.
Ooh.
I mean, let me tell you something right now. Listen, Lamar Jackson, I mean, they act like they're ready to erect a statue for John Harbaugh in New York. The man won 3 playoff games in 8 years.
Right.
The Buffalo Bills won 8. Yeah, listen, if I'm Baltimore, I'm rooting for Raheem Morris because I think Raheem Morris will cultivate a relationship with Lamar Jackson. He's never had a quarterback before, and I hope he gets it. But if not him, I wouldn't mind seeing McDermott go from Buffalo to Baltimore. Okay. And let's see what he does because I don't think he deserved to be fired at all. No. I really don't.
I don't
we
agree.
It's ridiculous. Here's the thing. The ridiculous part is that that they assign this to one loss. Like that you're talking about the Denver loss is why you made it. That is absurd. Like you're talking about a guy who you didn't win a playoff game for 17 years. This guy has taken you to the AFC Championship game twice and the playoffs dang near every year, and you're going to fire him over one season, one game of one season where your quarterback that you guys think are absolved doesn't play his best game? That's a freaking joke,
I didn't say he's absolved. Yeah. I said there are other people to blame and I agree with Steve on Dable. I agree with Steve. Let me just clarify Dable because Steve caught me on it. He's right. I think Dable's okay, but if I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, let me get this straight. I'm firing McDermott to bring Brian Dable here, who in his last 2 years with the Giants won 6 games, blew lead after lead after lead. I can't do that. I got to get somebody else in. I don't care what he did with Josh Allen. And the other thing that's fair. Now listen, I didn't know this. Steve is on the channel, so he may have heard it because he listens like you don't. But I had Vic Carucci on yesterday, and Vic Carucci's been covering NFL Network. He's a big football guy.
I know who he is. Thanks for telling me.
I wasn't sure. He doesn't cover hockey. He covers he doesn't cover the Sabres. He said that 5 weeks ago that they had a team meeting, and that McDermott went in there and told the owner and the GM, I don't have a Super Bowl roster.
They didn't like it.
And so as a result, that may have said, all right, you don't like the roster, get the hell out of here. We'll get somebody else. Right. So maybe that was shifted from a long time ago.
Well, let's stay. Hold on. Let's stay right there. He doesn't have a Super Bowl roster. The likelihood is that he said that to them because they were attaching Super Bowl expectations to him.
Exactly.
Based on a job that they believe Bean did. Now, anybody who knows football, and I'm deferring to all the football minds that we have, that we're blessed to have at our network here, there is no one that looked at the Buffalo Bills and said they got what it takes over an abundance of teams in the AFC, because we saw very early on that wasn't the case. So by that, combined with Bean being promoted to the presidency on the day that McDermott was fired, clearly Bean probably was offended that McDermott did that because that was an indictment against Bean. 100%. And Bean is like, the hell with that. I'm going to get somebody up in here, which means it was more personal because how dare you go in there and call me out? He's not thinking about the fact that you call McDermott out by putting him in a position where there's Super Bowl expectations based on a roster you accumulated that you know good and damn well wasn't Super Bowl ready. So you're not going to hold yourself accountable. You're going to hold the coach accountable. The stupidity of ownership here, and I'm not calling them stupid, I'm calling their statement stupid, is that they attached it to one game. If you simply had stated, we came into this season with Super Bowl expectations. If not, we anticipated making changes. We let McDermott know that. And now that it hasn't happened, we move forward. That would make more sense. But to act like this one game that occurred Saturday, in which the number 1 seed on its home turf beats you and takes overtime to do it, and that is what cost a guy that's been to the playoffs 8 of his 9 years and the last 7 consecutive years and has won the 2 AFC championship games and has the best record in football in the regular season over the last 6 years. That warrants a dismissal is asinine. Yep. It's 100%. Ridiculous.
Yeah, we agree.
Agreed.
Okay, so what does Sean McDermott do next? Stephen A. thinks maybe he should go to Baltimore. Keon Coleman. Saturday, go ahead.
Oh, it just gets worse. It gets worse. Like, if you're Keon Coleman, what are you thinking, right? Like they've it's time. Hey, whoever your agent is, start calling up because this is.
Get him up out of there.
Yeah, it's not his fault. Let me tell you, if Keon Coleman would have been a baller, Brandon Beane would have taken full credit. It would not get the buck would not have gotten paid. This is so silly. Brandon Beane has drafted 2 Pro Bowlers since Josh Allen, that being Dawkins and James Cook. Like, when you think about, give me a break. Like If you just say, I like Brandon Beane better, I sided with him, decided he's going to run my organization, that's the decision I make. Don't go through every decision, because I'm sure if that one was a bad one by the coaching staff also had some good ones that helped their team win and be the most winning franchise in the regular season over the last 8 years. This is why I've honestly believe general managers and head coaches go together. Like, they got to be locked, because agendas like this is silliness. This will tear up a locker room faster than anything, because now you're hearing all the inner workings of the front office part of football it's the business of ball, not real football. Players don't like it. They don't want to hear it. Fans don't like it. They don't want to hear it. It's bad deal by the owner. Bad deal.
Can't believe what we're hearing, Stephen.
Well, I agree with you, Jeff, but it's not just him. We're going to put Beane out there, too.
Yeah.
You know, clearly you've been engaging in CYA, covering your own ass. That's what he was doing. Because let me tell you something right now. You know what? You in the owner's ear talking about, well, this was a decision, and, you know, we're just going to roll with that. We're going to side with that, et cetera, et cetera. Not to say that McDermott didn't speak to the owner himself, but I'm just saying, to see what transpired, I want to remind everybody what happened. McDermott, who's taken the team to the playoffs the last 7 years and 2 AFC championship games and had the best record in football over 6 seasons, okay, at 73-27, 73% of his games, that's what he won, was fired. And the owner is saying that Saturday's loss is what did it. Well, how come the previous Saturday's win against Jacksonville didn't do it? You went into Jacksonville on the road against the number 3 seed and took them out. You went up against the number 1 seed and pushed them to overtime. That's what you did. You got a quarterback who was crying after the game saying he got to play better. He's got to protect the ball because he turned the ball over 4 times. Okay? You got a defense that hasn't been that impressive all year long, even though they've had some spots where they were pretty good. There's a lot of stuff that you can point to Beane about. And the reason why this smells, if the coach is gone and the owner said, hey, I wanted a berth to the Super Bowl, I told him at the beginning of the season, this is it. This is your last chance now. This is what it's all about. And I told him that. And damn it, it didn't happen. So that's the decision I made. Fine. Nobody can dispute that. But to say it's based on one game for 8-9 years to be usurped by one game, and then on that same exact day, the general manager, who's every bit as much of a culprit as McDermott, gets promoted. Promoted.
Brutal.
That smells. That smells. And so if you're a head coach out there now, here's where Beane has an advantage. He never hired McDermott. He came after. That helps him, because now he's saying, I want my own guy. And if you bring in your own guy, the likelihood, Jeff, is that they are going to be attached at the hip, because that is his own guy. It wasn't like he hired McDermott. You know, he came in and inherited him. And now you get to go out there and hire your own guy. But Beane is getting away with some stuff here, his damn self. And now he doesn't get to, because whoever he picks, he's definitely married to this pick as his next head coach.
Bottom line is that McDermott did not deserve to be fired, and they fired him. That's the bottom line.
Right.
And if you're going to fire him, the GM's got to get the hell out of there too.
Right.
And I'm sure McDermott loved a lot of guys in the draft room that he didn't draft, and he made a mistake.
Right.
So to pinpoint, the burnt Beane made a mistake. So now to pinpoint the one guy that McDermott liked, and then somehow Beane washes his hands when he's the general manager is absolutely absurd.
Absolutely.
And listen, Shaheed was available from the Saints. Water was available. I saw Shaheed running back punts and kickoffs, making big plays against the Rams.
Myers.
Right when they got there.
Kobe Myers is another one. He did not. And Cooks was a decent 2A guy, but I mean, still, generally speaking, that team was not improved in the course of this year, and everybody knew they had some weaknesses. And again, when McDermott goes to the owner and the GM about 5-6 weeks ago and says, listen, I don't think we got a Super Bowl roster, that must have bothered him. And you know what? He was right. Because their defense isn't good enough. They don't have enough weapons. And they didn't win the division. And they lost in the second round of the playoffs. So McDermott was right when he said to them a few weeks ago. And if he goes, Beane should go. And he should have gone anyway. And then Beane would have stayed too. So
I want him attached at the hip. I'm with you.
And one other thing. How the Sabres done lately? Pagula owns them too. They've been a laughing stock in the NHL. They've been a disgrace. They've made the playoffs in millions of years, and he owns them. And maybe this has also something to do with the new stadium, which opens up next year. He wants to start off with a clean face, fresh face, blah, 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 dee-dee-dee-dee. But you can't bring Dable in if that's the idea. When he was just fired by the Giants middle of the year, blowing leads left and right. You can
elevate Joe Brady.
Yeah.
You can elevate Joe Brady.
That you can do. That's what you can do. Dable, you can't. Brady, you can.
What's wild is after that Broncos game, we're not all sitting around being like, poor clock management, bad play calling, everything we would point to the coach for. Instead, we're over here talking about Keon Coleman and devastation in the locker room. Josh Allen.
You think the best guys have gone off the board? And, who are you looking at now to potentially fill these other jobs? Because to your point, Baltimore, gigantic. I mean, that's a gigantic job. They're supposed to win a Super Bowl last year. That same roster basically going to be there. Josh Allen, supposed to win a Super Bowl. Who's going to be the one that's going to figure that whole thing out? We'll dive into Brandon Beane and Pagula's press conference, which incredible. We need to get Pagula on a microphone all day, every day. Let's get him streaming like he's iShow Speed. Yeah. Let's get him like he's streaming like he's Kai Cenat. I need to hear every thought that comes out of his brain, because if you give him an opportunity, it sounds like it's going to come. It sounds like he's just spitting those things out. But when you look at these jobs, these are some massive jobs, Jage. Who the hell is going to get these jobs?
I mean, that's what's interesting about this whole coaching thing, and with the way the rules are set up with the coordinators in the championship games, because obviously, Harbaugh was going to be up there from the beginning, and you knew that somebody was going to jump on that, and it seemed like them and the Giants were going to line up. But then you start to get into this cycle of okay, well, we don't want to wait because we don't want to lose out on a guy, but we also want to see these coordinators for the championship teams, whether it's Shula, whether it's Kubiak, or whoever it may be, Vance Joseph. So you have to you're playing this dance of bird in the hand, two in the bush type situation, and it's also, I guess the coaches were also playing that a little bit with the Bills situation that pops up after both Harbaugh and Stefanski get their jobs lined up. So now you sit there and you wonder, man, are they pissed they didn't wait? Are they happy? But back to the tweets that I had put out there, I think this year, when you look at the situations that have come up, and I'm talking specifically about the Ravens and the Bills, where you have these guys who are legit, bona fide, already won MVPs in the National Football League, and you look at what Vrabel and Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen, and then a year before Mike McDonald, were able to do with those organizations. Don't get me wrong. Those teams all have quarterbacks that were drafted high, besides the Seahawks. They all have quarterbacks that were drafted high and have potential, no doubt. But none of those quarterbacks have won MVPs. So they're there's nobody out there saying that any of those quarterbacks were on the level that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were at that same time last year. So I look at those two jobs and I think you just fired two coaches who did a really good job for a very long time. No, they didn't accomplish that ultimate goal in these last few years with those quarterbacks, but you're not here to rebuild over time. The new coach there needs to win immediately, because it has clearly been proven that what's happened recently isn't good enough. So now it's time for this to turn into a Super Bowl in the next 1 to 2 years, and that is very hard to do.
John Walker, the fourth here. There had been three prior. Fodder's fodder. He was John Walker walking around at the beginning saying, there'll be three more of me, hopefully 4 or 5. He says, remember now, don't look too far back whenever these teams are absolute ass. Texans 3-13 3 years ago. Patriots 3-14, and then 4 games last year.
Yeah, 4-13 the last 2 years.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, a lot of numbers there. You get it. 3 years ago, the Broncos 5-12, Bears 3-14, Rams 5-12. It's it is crazy how quickly you can turn things around. And then if they were to put the Jags there, you would just say laughing stock for a very long time, even though they have players. And you talk about Liam Cohen going in there, and not only the Duval thing, but the actual convo was he wasn't going to be able to hire enough coaches. Remember that? He wasn't going to be able to field a staff because it was too late and he burned too many bridges and yada, yada, yada. It feels like he did just fine down there, and now everybody else is going to be expecting the same damn thing.
Well, the other tough thing with those teams, though, too, if you put that back up, all these teams, right? Texans, number 2 overall pick, they get C.J. Stroud. Pats at 3, Drake May. Denver at 11, was it? Or 13 with Bo Nix. Bears number 1 overall. They get Caleb, and then the Rams. You know, they 3 years ago, I guess they already had Stafford, but still, like, there is the argument you need to have either that top pick or, you know, you go like the Rams and you sell the farm and you bring in even that upgrade from Goff to Stafford was enough to get him over the hump. Like, it's very difficult too, because all those teams have very good quarterbacks.
Yeah, and if you just go 9-8 or whatever, to your point, you're not going to be able to get up to that's where the Steelers were kind of living for a long time, which is why Mike Tomlin stepping down is both a breath of fresh air, because if they're asked next year, maybe you're able to get a high pick, or maybe a new voice comes in and does its thing. Coach McCarthy, I do believe, getting interview with the Steelers. Very, 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 very real interview with the Steelers today. Coach Mike McCarthy. Obviously, he's a Yinzer. We've enjoyed getting to know him. But, like, I wonder how Coach McCarthy feels about this particular coaching pool with how many jobs are open. I'm sure he's pretty pumped up. It's like, hey, I got a lot of experience. I got a lot of success. Stepped away from the game for a year. Maybe got to see it from a different angle. And there's a lot of jobs open for Coach McCarthy right now. Pittsburgh would obviously be one I think he would hold very near and dear to his heart as he turns it around. So, you know, old names, new names, they got a lot of jobs still open. And Buffalo, who's going to get that gig? Brandon Beane and Terry Pagula did a press conference today.
They sure did.
You know, Bruce Arians yesterday on our show, and we would like to say Brandon Beane's been very good to us, like very good to us, maybe the nicest GM in all of sport to us. Mm-hmm. We appreciate Brandon Beane. We like what Brandon Beane does and how he operates. Great golfer, everything about it.
Talk shit.
Yeah, he's a shit talker. Like, we like Brandon Beane as the person. Now, granted, the conversation is certainly warranted to him.
You also like Dan Orlovsky. You got no problem going at him, so you got to have no problem going at your friends. Love it.
Bingo.
Love it.
That's what I'm about to do, yeah. McDermott gets fired. Beane gets promoted. That's a weird turn of, even for us liking him, like, that's a weird turn of events to happen when the same outcome happens every year. Yeah, I think you're also kind of intrigued by it. So then Beane and Pagula, owner Terry Pagula, have a press conference, and Pagula takes it upon himself basically to be like, let me set the record straight. There's no power. Brandon Beane ain't come in and say Sean McDermott can't get the job done. That's not it. If he was a power play guy, I'd sniff him out. I'd get him out of here. It's like, okay, you're going to continue to talk here and make us believe that you certainly have a clue on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Then he continues, he continues just kind of unravel.
But he also didn't pick the draft pick, but it's not a power play, but yeah.
Yeah, then things are coming out like, well, actually, Keon Coleman, everybody's saying he's on Brandon Beane. Turns out, Sean McDermott up on table for this guy.
My decision to bring in a new coach was based on the results of our game in Denver. I want to take you in the locker room after that game. I looked around. First thing I noticed was our quarterback with his head down, crying. I looked at all the other players. I looked at their faces and our coaches. I walked over to Josh. He didn't even acknowledge I was there. First thing I said to him, I said, that was a catch. We all know what I'm talking about. He didn't acknowledge me. He just sat there sobbing. He was listless. He had given everything he had to try to win that game. And looking around, so did all the other players on the team. I did not fire a coach based on a bad officiating decision. If I can take you into that locker room, I felt like we hit the proverbial playoff wall.
Okay, so the loss to the Broncos on Sunday led to McDermott being fired on Monday, while GM Brandon Beane was promoted to president of football operations. Beane was asked about his roster construction, specifically the wide receivers surrounding Josh Allen. Take a listen.
The wide receiver position has been an issue with this team, and a lot of people out there believe you have failed in the free agent market, and then obviously with the Keon Coleman signing, which hasn't worked out. How do you answer the fact that you have not given Josh a good enough wide receiver room thus far?
Yeah, can I interrupt? I'll address the Keon situation. The coaching staff pushed to draft Keon. I'm not saying Brandon wouldn't have drafted him, but he wasn't his next choice. That was Brandon being a team player and taking advice of his coaching staff who felt strongly about the player. And, he's taken, for some reason, heat over it and not saying a word about it. But I'm here to tell you the true story.
All right, we have a whole squad to talk about it. Elena Getzenberg, Harry Douglas, and Mike T here with me. So, Elena, I'm going to start with you. There was a lot to unpack in that presser today. You're there. What was the atmosphere like in the room?
Yeah, I think the takeaway from this one was overall the surprise came with those comments on Keon Coleman. Now, I've talked to a couple people in the organization since then, and some feel that Terry Pegula was just speaking the truth. I think some context with this press conference, too, is that this is the first time that owner Terry Pegula has taken questions in over 6 years. So there was a lot to get to with this one. So him coming out and saying that Keon Coleman, the second-year receiver who's had some disciplinary issues, hasn't had a lot of success on the field, was the coaching decision, a head coach that he just fired, was a surprise. And yes, some felt it was honest. Of course, Brandon Beane did make that choice and kind of said that he acknowledged today that he made that choice. So that was where the surprise came in. I will say there was some times in this press conference where there were inconsistencies with Terry Pegula, saying it wasn't about the catch, no catch Brandon Cooks make, but then later saying, when Brandon Beane was asked, you said this was a championship caliber roster, what happened? Terry Pegula interrupted and said there was a bad officiating call. So there was a lot of discrepancy throughout this press conference and a lot of moments where, some things were said that made sense, some things didn't click as well with, Terry Pegula unable to answer whether or not roster decisions or coaching comes down to how successful a team can be. So really some answers and some questions still lingering from this press conference.
Okay, Harry, I want to go to you about this. What's your reaction after hearing his comments?
Well, number one, when you look at wide receiver Keon Coleman, in drafting him, someone had to sign off on that. The general manager, the owner. It's not just going to be a head coach saying, hey, we're going to draft Keon Coleman, and he makes that decision 1,000%. No, it's two people ahead of the head coach who have to make that decision. Here's the second thing. If I'm Keon Coleman, I'm saying to myself, I need to get myself together as well, too, because these guys drafted me in the second round so I can make a major difference. So going into 2026, he's going to have to get it together. He's going to have to be a key component and someone that this football team can count on. They don't have time to wait on him because Josh Allen is in his prime. Secondly, I would say this. It's not just the wide receiver position in Buffalo. It's also their secondary. Go back to the AFC Championship game last season where Patrick Mahomes basically did exactly what he wanted from a pass game standpoint. Go back to this game versus the Denver Broncos when they needed a stop on 3rd and 11 and couldn't get a 3rd and 11 stop. And Cortland Sutton comes on a big end cut and catches the football. Or how about when the wide receiver runs a double move and he catches a touchdown to take the lead for the Denver Broncos? This secondary, in my opinion, has also, I would say, impeded this team or stopped this team, been a dark cloud for them the last 2 years are not progressing and going where they want to go. Now, the wide receiver position is important, but let's not gloss over the secondary and what the secondary has not been able to do the last 2 years as well.